Hi, my name is Skipper Chong Warson. I'm a design director in San Francisco, and thanks for tuning in to How This Works. This is a show where I invite people on to talk about subjects that they know extremely well. Nicolai Lipscomb is here to talk to us today about being a chef, something he knows a lot about. So, Nicolai, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Very excited to chat about this. This is exciting.
Nicolai, break it down. Who are you? How would you introduce yourself if you were at a party, if that was a thing right now?
I'm from the peninsula, which is between Santa Cruz and San Francisco. Small town called Loma Mar. So I'm from a very small town, and I grew up there. It's a town of about 103, and then I commuted to school in Half Moon Bay.
And that's in the state of California, just for people who may not be familiar with.
Grew up in Half Moon Bay, and that's kind of, I guess, the first 18 years of my life, right? After that, then I went to college and studied engineering for a little while. And then I became a chef and did that for about 20 years. I also became a father about 5 years ago. So that's a big part of who I am. And I got married about 7 years ago. So I'm definitely a husband as well. Combination of father, husband, chef. I'm a Christian. I'm also a Taoist.
A lot of things. So what's something that people may not guess about you? Something that you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, I'm a pretty candid, open book type of person. I think the thing that a lot of people don't know about me that is kind of interesting is a lot of motorcyclists share it. A lot of people that jump out of airplanes share it, and it's that we don't feel normal like the rest of people because we need to go to a certain extreme. We need chaos in our lives and intense chaos to let out endorphins. And so what that creates like riding a motorcycle really fast makes me feel normal. While it scares other people, it scares me in the second, but afterwards I feel a sense of calm or sense of peace. I meditate, and I definitely can get that sense of calm, but it's different. Like there's the endorphins aren't there. Like the meditation's more of like a mind thing, where the endorphins feels like it's more of a body thing.
Like you can't get enough.
And so like being cooped up right now in COVID is tough because I'm not out there getting stressed. Feels more safe, which I don't like. It makes me feel unsettled.
Okay.
So that's kind of something that a lot of people don't know. Actually, how I found out about it is I was on my motorcycle in 2005 doing a cross country trip. I did like 3 months of just riding around, and I was at this hostel in Tofino, which is on Vancouver Island, and a gal that was staying at the hostel as well. We went and got like a smoothie or something, and we're hanging on the beach. And she was telling me about skydiving. She was a big skydiver, and she's kind of the one that when somebody's talking to you and they tell you something, and it's like, whoa, you just gave me insight about myself. I'd never been able to explain it. And so she's kind of the one that explained it to me. And she said, most likely you have what a lot of skydivers have, what a lot of people have. And it made a lot of sense. And so the next day when I was going down to Victoria, which was south in Nanaimo, there's a bridge you can bungee jump off of. She told me that bungee jumping actually releases more endorphins because you see the ground coming at you. So it scares you more than skydiving.
Okay.
So she's like, yeah, you should try bungee jumping and see what it does for you. I did it. And, when you're standing up there, you're looking down and they're like, do you want to go in the water or not? Put me in the water. And so I did it. And oh man, I rode my motorcycle slow, which isn't something like in my nature. Like I get on it and I just jam. And I remember like it was like a half hour riding afterwards. And I'm just like, I'm going slower than the speed limit. And then it's like, whoa, this is the most I've ever felt at peace. Like I feel so good. And it was true. I got, the endorphin high.
Yeah.
And it just felt so incredible. And I haven't done it since. I want to definitely do it again. But yeah, so.
I have so many questions. And,
right.
We generally have been in some version of quarantine for the last 8 or 9 months. What have you found while you're in this state that achieves some of that you have found before by bungee jumping or motorcycle riding or things like that?
Sadly, I haven't.
No.
Yeah. it's a struggle. It's a big struggle for someone like me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's why I like being a chef. It's, if you look at like a lot of what I do and how I tick, it's kind of like throw me into the fire and I feel good. It's weird. Like a room can erupt at restaurants. They always get chaotic. Like restaurants are like in a constant state of chaos. So like as a chef, big part of what you're doing is always putting them back in order.
Yeah.
And assuring people that everything will be okay. And so the crazier things get, the more I feel normal, the more I just, my focus, I get more focused. I mean, you're moving fast and you're thinking really, really fast, but that stress and pressure makes me feel better because my mind can focus on one thing and focus intensely on it. And it kind of goes back to that same thing. Like I need that, that intensity.
So let's actually get into that. Nicolai, what is the thing that we had planned to talk about today? What is that thing that you consider yourself very well versed?
Well, definitely being a chef. Absolutely. And restaurants as a whole. I know restaurants in and out because I've been so deeply entrenched in them and passionate about them, which I'm sure you've heard things like, as a designer, I'm sure you've heard like how our brains, they work so much better when you engage creativity and you're interested in them. I've always been interested in them and I've always loved it.
That's great. Nicolai, can we rewind not just to your college days when you were studying engineering, and I don't remember exactly how you described it, but this notion of cooking in general and eventually this idea of becoming a chef. Can you talk a little bit about how you discovered cooking? What was inspiring about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So cooking I discovered when I was probably about 7 or 8. Do you remember Eggo waffles and how popular they were then and how much they advertised them?
Yeah.
Well, my mom wouldn't buy Eggo waffles because she knew they were made of junk.
They're terrible. They're absolutely terrible.
They were made of junk. I mean, a lot of packaged food is, right?
Yes.
And my mom definitely was on the... It's funny because back then it was like she was super strict, but you look at it nowadays and you're like, man, she was dead on with what she was doing. And, as a kid, you're like, I'm never going to do this with my kids. And now it's like, I'm even more strict.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted Eggo waffles. So I would make waffles and we would have 20, 30 waffles all around my kitchen, cooling on chopsticks, on cookie racks, on anything, because you had to cool the bottom, right? So you had to have them a little bit high. And my mom would come in and just be like, what are you doing? I was like 7 or 8. And I'd be making my own Eggo waffles. And I would wrap them up and I'd freeze them. And then throughout the week, I would pop them in the toaster and have some waffles in the morning before school.
Yeah. And,
that's, I think that when I started cooking and it was like, I just wanted them so bad. And so when I was in college, fast forward, I guess, 11, 12 years, I've always like, I hate working on things that don't have a purpose. And so when you're in college, it's like, what degree for what career? That's like the big question.
Yes.
And you don't think outside
A plus
of
B equals career. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so I never thought of being a chef. It wasn't even on the table. It was like, okay, I went to school for finance because I really, I was always good with money. So it was like, okay, finance.
Yeah.
And then I started doing that. I was like, this is awful. I don't like this.
Okay.
And then I didn't switch majors, but I tried psychology. And I was like, I loved it. And then I asked the teacher what kind of jobs I could get. And he told me, and I was like, that sounds awful. So I loved the subject, but the kind of careers you could get was just not for me.
Yeah.
And then I started engineering because I loved math. I loved building things. And I was waiting tables at the time, and I talked to a guy that was probably like in his 70s or 80s and probably retired for 20, 30 years by that point. And he was telling me about electrical engineering, and I was like, that's the perfect career. That sounds great. Okay. So I changed my major. I spent a year in doing engineering classes. I was in like Calc 3 and computer programming class came about, and I hated it. Like, just hated it. And so I went to, I found an engineer. I knocked on their door, and they thought I was there for like an internship. They're like, we don't do internships. I'm like, no. I just need to know if all this work is worth it. And they're like, sure, kid, you can hang out with me. So I went and hung out with them for 3 days, and I found out this isn't for me. It's all on computers now. It's not what the older guy explained to me.
Okay.
It's changed. And, cause he just, the older guy described, circuit boards and, going out, working on them. And then when I found out it was more computer based,
like physically building things.
Yeah. It was like more physical, but like very, very technical,
intricate.
very
And
technical.
yeah. Okay.
And so I really liked that. And then when it was computer, it was like, I can't sit there and computer program. Like I was going nuts. I was doing like, I think C++.
Yeah.
And I think I was maybe Java then. And so I was doing kind of the classic whining to mom moment. Like, what am I going to do? It's like 3 years. I now have engineering classes. I don't know if I want to be an engineer. And my mom was the one that like, she just really wanted me to go to college. It was funny that side story is I was like I think a sophomore, and they're like, hey, Nick, if you don't go to college, we'll buy you a car. And I was so independent at that time that I actually already had college applications filled out. Like it was either sophomore or junior, right? Whenever you're doing that. And I was like, awesome. I just got a car.
Something I'm already doing.
Yeah, it was great. So they ended up buying me a car, and I was like, haha. I don't think I ever told them that I was already flying. And so they really wanted me to go to college. So if anybody else would have said it, I probably would have dismissed it. But when mom said, why don't you look into being a chef? You've always liked cooking. It was like, I mean, the memory is so vivid. Like I can tell you the car, I can tell you where I was driving, I can tell you the weather. It was like everything, all the visuals just spun in a circle. And then I was like, wow, yes.
Okay.
Chef.
Okay.
I'm going to look into that.
Okay.
And so what I did is I went around, I was going to school in Sacramento. So I went around Sacramento, and I interviewed different chefs, and I said, how do you become a chef? And I was 19. One of them, was like, hey, you like beer? I was like, yeah, of course I like beer. And so he sat me down at the bar, and we drank a couple beers, and he broke it down for me. And he's just like, you can go to school and then get a job. You can go get a job, or you can be an apprentice and then get a job.
Right.
And he's like, no matter what you do, if you go to school or be an apprentice, that's just to kind of get you primed to start learning.
Okay.
And so I ended up taking a busing job there.
Same restaurant?
And same restaurant. Yeah, he didn't have a spot in the kitchen.
Okay.
But he's like, hey, if you want. And so I was waiting tables, I was going to school, and I was like, yeah, why not? So I started busing there, and he would have me come in the kitchen every now and then. And like the first thing he had me do was slice a deli ham.
Okay.
And I sliced the whole deli ham, and I didn't know that there was a wrapper on it. So I had to go through every slice. I'm like,
It's like the ribbon on salami, right? When you buy it. Yeah.
But like, big old ham. It's like, oh, you idiot. So I was there, and I was like, okay, I want to be an apprentice. I don't want to pay for school. I don't want to go try something again and end up in debt.
Okay.
I already owe college. So I was like, okay, apprenticeship. And my aunt, who lived in Sacramento and close to her, so she was helping me look and figure this how do you become a chef thing out.
Yeah.
She saw a PBS special with a chef named Barbara Lynch on it, and so I was like, okay, Barbara Lynch sounds great. Started looking into her, and at the time I thought I didn't know what a good restaurant was at all. Like, looking back, man, crazy ignorant to what a good restaurant was. And calling. So what I did is I said I wanted a job. How do I do it?
Yeah.
So I started calling Barbara Lynch I called originally, and I said, hey, I got a hold of her. She was in the kitchen. They transferred me. I said, hey, when are you free? When's a good time to talk? She said, Tuesdays. I'm always here, between service.
Okay.
I said, okay. So
and that's between like lunch service and dinner service.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Between basically like luncheons,
Okay.
Around 2, and then dinner picks up at 5.
Okay.
So I called her at 3:00 every Tuesday until she'd pick up the phone, and she'd be like, hey, Nick. She wouldn't even say hello. She'd just be like,
she just knew it was you. Me. Okay.
And I'd be like, hi, chef. Like, is there anything? And after doing that for 3 months, she's like, I'm going to be in California. Why don't you come by? I'll be in Sonoma doing a demo. There was like a documentary made about her.
Okay.
And so they were showing it at, I think it's like Jack London Park or something like that.
Okay.
And so she was doing a demo outside, and I showed up in like a full suit. I'm pretty sure I had like blue hair at the time. I think I had an eyebrow ring and like, the bars in my ear.
Okay.
And she's just like, who the hell is this kid? like blue hair, suit. Like I sat down and I interviewed her, and just like, she asked me some questions, but I had so many questions, right? So I was just like, what books do I need to read? What does it mean to become a chef?
Yeah.
Like, I'm looking into it, and there's no degrees for a chef. Like, how do you know when you're a chef?
Sure.
She answered all these questions. And at the end, she's like, look, kid, if you can get to Boston, I'll have a job for you.
Okay. So Boston is where she was. Okay.
She was in Boston.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I moved back there with, I think, $1,800. I bought like a futon for a couple $100. And I showed up, and she's like, well, sure, you got a job. And so I started prepping in the back and grinding it out. But that's kind of where I got my start. And she ended up the next year winning a James Beard Award. So it was like a very intense year, a very important year, leading up to one of her biggest moments, which was, winning that James Beard Award.
Okay.
And then she ended up promoting me a year after to open as her opening sous chef to her second restaurant, which was just insane because I did not know what I was doing. I just worked and worked and worked to kind of make up. But that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
I wanted to learn, and that's how you do it.
Yeah.
You just get thrown in the fire, and your body starts getting the muscle memory. You start learning, and the more intense it is, the quicker you learn it.
Sure. It's the 10,000 hours paradigm, or some version of it.
I don't know that one. What's that one?
Oh, Malcolm Gladwell talks about this in Blink, his book Blink.
Oh, yeah. I love Blink.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he talks about like 10,000 hours of mastery is really what it takes to sort of like be an expert. One of the examples that he gives is when the Beatles, before they ever released their first record, when they were playing in Hamburg, Germany, and they were playing in, seedy nightclubs or strip bars, depending on who you talk to. And they would just play sort of around the clock, right? Taking breaks to like nap and like maybe go crash out for a couple hours. But like literally they played for something like, 18, 20 hours a day. And they did this for like a couple years before they ever got a recording contract or any of those things. So like that's one of the examples that he brings up of like someone spending that time of really like doing the work in order to gain the expertise.
It's awful. I read that book and I don't remember.
I think is it Blink or is it his other book? It was one of Malcolm Gladwell's books, but
yeah.
Well, anyway, how old were you when you moved to Boston?
I think I just turned 21.
21. Okay.
I think I was like 21 in a couple months.
Okay. So 21.
21 in Sacramento.
Okay.
Yeah, it was that summer.
So you moved to Boston. You're 21. You're there with Barbara Lynch. The following year, she wins a James Beard Award, which is huge in the culinary world. And then you opened as a sous chef in her second restaurant. How much longer did you stay in Boston? Did you go to Spain right after that, or?
I spent 3 years with Barbara, and I spent a year at Number 9.
Okay.
A little less than a year at B&G Oysters, which was her second restaurant. She opened B&G Oysters and Butcher Shop right across the street from each other. It was such a cool experience.
So Number 9, B&G Oysters, and Butcher Shop.
Restaurants have changed so much. Just like, and then I went back to Number 9 because I really craved learning to cook.
Okay.
And I was starting to manage because I was there, and I just wanted to cook. So she had me come over, and I worked every station. And then close to finishing up there, I started talking to her about, hey, what's next? Because I got an apprenticeship with her.
Okay.
And I was her first apprentice. So like it wasn't just a job. It was like a lot of, hey, what should I do next? What should I read? What should I be doing?
Some mentoring as well. So it wasn't just like the paycheck and the experience, but it was also about the guidance.
Yeah. And I didn't know anyone, so I was 100% immersed into cooking, which is, what you really have to do to become good at anything. And so, yeah, so she was in a European, well, I don't know if it was European. It started in Europe, but it was women's chefs group.
Okay.
And she was the only American in it. And in that group was like Anne-Sophie Pic and Elena Arzak, and there's some amazing chefs.
Okay.
And Spain was like, I really wanted to go to Spain. So because she knew Elena, you know, I wrote a letter, and then a friend of mine helped me translate it into Spanish.
Okay.
And culturally changed it for me because she understood the culture there and, you know, how to speak to appease, you know, getting the
be respectful and yeah.
So I wrote it in English. She helped me in Spanish.
Yeah.
And so I sent those 2 letters. And so then I got a phone call, and, you know, they accepted me into their program, and they actually are paired up with a school. So they do a year-long program, and so it's free. So from Boston, that's when I jumped on my motorcycle, rode across the country, and, you know, did that for 3 months. And then I lived with my brother so I could save money.
Okay.
And so I just worked and saved, and, you know.
And this is back in California?
In California.
Okay.
Yeah. Northern California. My brother was there then.
Okay.
And, saved a bunch of money, shot back there, and started cooking. And, you know, the rent here at San Sebastián, which is just, you know, gorgeous city. And it's funny because I go there and like the rent was like, I think it was like 180 for a room. So cheap. You know, I was like, well, how's it so cheap? And just traveled on the weekends, and, you know, they would close for a couple weeks. So there's a lot of traveling. And then afterwards I took 3 months and traveled. And then while I was there, I went and ate at a restaurant called Celler Can Roca.
Okay.
And, you know, you're back there working, and there's, you know, the way a lot of the Spanish restaurants worked then was there'd be a few paid people and the rest would be interns.
Oh,
and
interesting.
How they could do such amazing food.
Okay.
And so there was just a great community at Arzak. I think we would do 150 covers, which was insane for a 3 Michelin restaurant to be doing 150 covers in the service.
What is 100? What does a cover mean?
A person.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, we call them covers.
Okay.
So it's like 150 people we fed.
Okay.
And that's a lot for a 3 Michelin restaurant.
Okay.
And there's 30 of us in the kitchen though.
Wow.
So, you know, it's just a good community. It's almost like being in school or something where there's just so many different people, you know, you get along with a lot of them.
Yeah.
Some whatever you get along with. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. I think I was like 25 by then,
okay.
25, 26
okay.
when I did that. And a lot of them were, you know, younger kids. So I was a little bit older, and I had a lot of experience from cooking with Barbara.
Okay.
In between that, I actually opened a restaurant in California. So I had experience of doing that. And then while I was there, I ate at Celler Can Roca because the chefs were just, you know, it's kind of like there's a buzz. Everybody's talking about restaurants, you know, if you're in that world. And Celler Can Roca was the place. So I went and had a meal there, and it blew me away. It was the best meal I've ever had.
Wow.
And so, of course, I was like, okay, this is where I want to work. And so I ended up traveling for 3 months, and then I get back to Spain, and I go to Girona where Can Roca is, and they just closed for a holiday for like, I think it was like 3 weeks. You know, I'm like, you kidding me? So what do? I went and got an apartment in Blanes, which is a little town on the Mediterranean, and I just hung out for a few more months. And you know, I went back and asked for a job, and they're like, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
You know, this is the busy season. You know, we can pay you then. I was like, okay. So I came back to California.
Okay.
And stayed with my brother again, you know, and then went back and worked at Can Roca, and that was, again, just an unbelievable experience.
Okay.
Wow.
But what's something that you learned in that period of time that not a lot of people know? Like, what's something that you experienced while you were sort of, you know, going back and forth between finding ways to like save money so you can, live and focus on your work. What's something that somebody wouldn't know about that?
Like specifically on the work or just kind of like the journey?
Either or, whatever, like either the journey or the work itself.
I'm thinking like sacrifice. Sacrifice is kind of, why do we sacrifice? We give up something today so we have something better tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of the reason behind sacrifice.
So, you talked about like you're someone who needs adrenaline and needs excitement.
Mm-hmm.
So what's exciting about either cooking in a kitchen like you were in Boston or in Spain? Like what's exciting about that for you?
The intensity. I mean, you have chefs are intense people. They're so passionate and they so care about, pleasing their guests. And I mean, it's not a career for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
It's like the better you want to be, the more intense it gets.
Yeah.
And so Arzak, I think, was like number 7 in the world then. And
okay.
For the Pellegrino. And I think Roca ended up coming up to number 1. Then I worked for Ferran, Adria, who was number 1. I worked at his laboratory, and like just the professionalism is super high, but I mean, it is a chaotic world.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think if you come from the business world and you step into like what you'd call a professional kitchen, it would either look chaotic or it would look like, wow, look at what's going on. Like there's 30 people running around and they're all in unison, they're all listening to the commander.
Yeah.
And they're pumping this beautiful food out. But the intensity is definitely what kind of connects the two, that adrenaline. And I mean, when I went back to Spain, they called the food not in Spanish, but in the Basque language, so I had to learn like, what is he saying? How many is that? What's that mean?
Right.
And so it's, and the intensity doesn't stop, it's like, get on board or get the hell out of the way.
Yeah.
So like that intensity is amazing, and it's somewhat addictive. It's not 100% unique to the restaurants, but it definitely is a unique environment.
Yeah. So how did that experience for you? Like what is your relationship to cooking now?
You take kind of where we've been going with the intensity, and it's hard, right? And if you continue on that path, it eats you up.
Yeah.
Right. And so I've seen a lot of people kind of in this transition where they want to be a chef. They've definitely committed years to the craft, and then they get to a point that they start like wanting the next level.
Okay.
And for some reason, I think people think, the higher you go, the more life balance you get. It's like no,
right.
You don't. And, connecting the two and kind of where it is now for me, and I think for a lot of people is you accept the craziness and you're okay with it.
Okay.
Or you burn out, right? Like I can't tell you how many chef names you hear about that, they burn out and they don't do restaurants anymore.
Yeah.
Because you kind of have to be okay with the chaos. It's restaurants are chaos and control, right? Like I said that earlier. And when you're racing a clock, so you do a lunch service and a dinner service, and that's what you're doing. You're taking chaos and trying to put it into control by a deadline.
Yeah.
Twice a day, every day.
Yeah.
It makes you tick differently.
Yeah.
It totally makes you tick differently. And when you become okay with that, and it doesn't affect you emotionally anymore, that's like the hurdle that I'm trying to explain. Like I've seen people kind of get run over by the bus, if you will.
Yeah.
You have to accept it and you have to learn to cope with it. But like it's not even learning. It's like it needs to become part of your nature.
Yeah.
Or else it will eat you up.
Yeah. I read an interview recently with David Chang, because he just released a book where he talks about his own experience. And one of the things that he also talks about in the book is his struggle with depression, and maybe it's too far by saying mental illness, but like how he coped with it. And for years, he just kind of just ground through it, right? He was just like, no, I have to keep working. I have to keep focused. And, but then, a few years ago when he saw Anthony Bourdain passed away, he was like, yeah, I think I have to tell this part of my story and I say all of this, leads up to a question for you. You talked about between some of your cooking stints, you would take a break. And some of it wasn't necessarily of your plan, right? That, the restaurant wasn't going to be open or whatever it was, the opportunity wasn't lined up. Was part of taking those breaks for you also about taking a break from the kitchen so you could be fully prepared and present while you were there?
100%. 100%. I think there's only been one time that I've gone job to job, and it hurt.
Okay.
Yeah, because you immense you dive into this stuff, right? Like you got to make it a lifestyle, right? Like your time off, if you're not going to a winery,
yeah,
right? Like a winery is relaxing, it's great, but when you're in the industry, it's also part of the industry, right? So you got to make your days off, like learning lessons around food. You got to go to the farmer's market and enjoy it. I mean, you don't have to do that for every restaurant, but if you're trying to make a name for yourself as a chef, not as a restaurant, it needs to be like, it's an all-in type of thing. And how do you go all in if you're just clocking in and out? Like you can't clock in and out. So you live this lifestyle. So it's like, okay, I'm going to live this lifestyle so I can get better. Because it's like, okay, you're going to work 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
When are you going to have time to visit the farms?
Right.
Like what people vision is that what chefs do is not what we do, right? We're not like at the farm planting seeds and all that. We might have I have a house now and I have a garden.
Sure.
But it's not for the restaurant. Like
right.
I can't grow for the number of people I serve. There's no way. You have to work with your farmers.
Right.
So you have to incorporate it. It's like the social time needs to be at the farmer's market, and you need to enjoy that. You need to sit down and have a meal there.
Yeah.
If it's that type of farmer's market, meet some people there, get to know the farmers, and it's like now you're getting like the social needs that you need. You're getting the connections that you need.
Yeah.
But they're still grounded like in your world.
Yeah. So we're recording this episode at the end of November 2020. And we've mentioned a few times, the notion of what's happening in the world right now with COVID-19. This is something that has absolutely directly impacted the restaurant industry.
Oh, massively.
Is what we're going through right now, does it mean the restaurant industry is going to die? Is this the last gasp of like eating out? What does it mean?
It might feel like that, but absolutely not. No way.
Yeah.
No way. Like people love to get together. It's like, yeah, this is changing the world, but we're still humans, and we're still social creatures.
Yeah.
And we love to eat. We crave. Who doesn't have craving for food and social? So it'll come back when it's there. It's gonna take some time, and it's gonna be a struggle. I think the sad thing right now is that you see a lot of people that have worked and gained the knowledge are getting out and going into other industries. And so the people that are staying in it, a lot of them are the ones that are owning and are like kind of stuck. So they might get burned out. Who knows? But there's definitely going to be like, I think there's going to be less like of the knowledge on like how to run a restaurant. I don't think there'll ever be a lack on like how to cook or talent, because talent like that comes from somebody's like desire, right? And I don't think that's going to go away.
Yeah.
Passion. Yeah. Learning to cook is, I always say like to be a chef, it's like, if you can't cook, then, you really should find a new career. Cause that's like the minimum. Like if you don't know how to cook, then
it's the core skill set.
It ain't going to work,
Right.
And so you have to build upon all those other things to operate a kitchen. And then if you want to operate a restaurant, it's even more. And then if you want to, scale and have 3 or 5 restaurants, which that's really where, you do have to get to like 5 restaurants in order to not work so much.
I see. So you think that's a little bit of a sweet spot?
Yeah, it's between 3 and 5 is kind of the sweet spot where you can slow down because restaurants make 10% if they're doing good.
Wow.
So it's like we're a $3 million restaurant, so I should make 300,000, right? It's like, no, that's if you're doing really good. And if you have a $3 million restaurant, how many investors do you have that are taken from that pool? So it's, a $3 million restaurant probably costs a pretty penny to open.
Yeah.
Or a lot of equipment or, some kind of investment, or you did it right.
Yeah.
So COVID will change things. It has. We're in another set of lockdowns, which is going to, here in Sacramento, they said the current state of lockdowns is going to close 50% of restaurants that aren't backed by chains or corporations.
Wow.
And, restaurants are the number one employer in California.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
California is 1/8 of the United States population and the biggest employer.
Yeah.
It's like shuttering like crazy. So it's sad. It's super sad. Like restaurants are trying to do outdoor dining. They're trying to do models that they're not built for, which means no efficiency, which means you need more labor, and labor is kind of what kills a restaurant. So it's a nasty cycle. And it's, the people that are out there fighting it, it's like good on them, man. Like, fight, because this is the time that they have to.
So what are you focused on now in your work? Are you still working in the restaurant trade? Are you looking in other, you talked about a little bit of that brain drain of people leaving the restaurant industry. Are you one of those people who've moved on?
Yes and no. I decided to kind of pivot a little bit in 2019.
Okay.
And so this is kind of strengthened that pivot, but at the same time, it's brought me back a little bit because I pivoted away from hospitality.
Okay.
And now I'm kind of marrying the two. So I want to be in SaaS and tech, but in SaaS is like solving an issue, right? So where's my strength in solving issues? Well, in restaurants.
Yeah.
So if I can find something that marries the two, and I've got different irons in fire, it's TBD, so I still am consulting, which consulting right now it's rough.
It's strange.
It's like, because it's like normally you go in and you're the one that, I'm the guy that's going to make you more money. It's like I make money off of your margins.
Right.
But now it's like I just do anything to help you stay open, and it's a lot of sympathy. It's like I'm an empathetic person, but sympathetic, not usually so much. But right now there's a lot of sympathy for what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's.
Before we started recording, you mentioned that you actually worked on a line last night.
Yeah, I worked on the line.
How was that?
It's good.
Yeah.
It was slow, so maybe for a good thing, or maybe not. But working on the line, it's part of my nature. I can jump on just about any line and hang.
Did it feel like? Did you feel like you were sort of
very good line cook back in the day?
Yeah. Did you feel like you were sort of like stretching muscles that you hadn't used for a while? Even if it was a different pace? Oh, you're back.
No, it's like riding a bike, totally.
Okay.
What's hard is when you don't know the food, and it's like, what goes in? So what is this? But I've been there 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So
okay.
Yeah, it was good. I definitely still cook, but I just not so much on the line. I more do events, where it's like cooking whole animals and building fires and serving a lot more people. My favorite way of cooking nowadays is like paellas and whole animals.
Oh, okay.
Where it's just really me feeding a bunch of people, or like my wife loves to help me, and it's it's fun to do it with her.
Nice. Do your kids get in on it?
They think they do. Yeah. They have like little plastic knives and they help me cut stuff, and they're super cute. They love cooking. They love food. So I have my outlet that I've created for cooking is called Ferdinand's Paella.
Okay.
The Ferdinand the Bull.
Okay.
And so I do whole animals and paellas through that. And, I don't need much staff to do that. So like my family will help or friends will help. It's funny. I get more professional chefs that like own restaurants wanting to hang out with me and cook paellas. And it's like, it's just cracked me up because it's like, man, this is so cool. I get like the best labor for a couple beers, you know. And it's so fun because it's like they just hang out, and, you know, and they love it because, you know, paella is definitely, it's not something you see in restaurants, right? Because it's very much like a thing you do for crowds.
It takes a long time to cook too.
It takes about an hour start to finish.
Yeah.
Once the stock hits the rice, it's 20 minutes, and then you got to let it sit. But I mean, where it takes a long time is actually like the day before, because the stock is so important. I mean, that's where you're getting, you know, almost all your flavor. I mean, all the ingredients definitely add to it.
Yeah.
But your base and your umami and all that stuff is coming from the stock.
Paella is one of my favorite things. When I see it on a menu or I see that someone is going to make it, like, it's always my favorite thing to try, just because it's such a wonderful combination of like flavors and textures, and like all of the effort that goes into making it, I think is truly wonderful.
Yeah, it's fun. It's like it's such a social dish, right? Like, you know, you don't make paella in the back and serve it. It's like you make it.
It's out in the open,
right near
big
the crowd.
pot. Yeah.
You know, they come over, they smell it. I mean, it's like, you know, my pan's a 4-foot pan, so it's like the amount of,
it's hard to miss,
steam that's coming from it. Just like you can be outside and the whole area just smells incredible. You know, it's just, it's like I forget what book it was. I was reading something, and it was like how you can just cut some onions up and saute them, and literally like people will just like become happier just from the smell of onions.
Nice.
You know? And it's like, you see that, you know, people are just so happy when you cook paella, and it's like their faces are, it's part of the enjoyment. It's not just the cooking, you know, it is a social thing. You know, that people are of course always drinking wine, and, you know, everybody has a story about the best paella they had, or, you know, it's the first time they've had paella.
Yeah. I would love to continue talking about paella and food in general, but I think we're coming to the end of our time together.
Sure.
And it's right around lunchtime. So
yeah, definitely.
I'm looking forward to whatever it is that I'm going to have for lunch. But I wonder, Nicolai, if we could close things out with a couple of questions. So whether it is in regard to your cooking or other things that you've done in your life, what's one of the most important lessons that you've learned so far?
Patience. You know, in cooking, patience is a hard lesson. Yeah. Especially when you're starting out, you're trying to get set up, and, you know, you want to rush food, and food doesn't want to be rushed. Food is ready when food's ready. Right. So you really have to, you know, learn how to make everything work. But that learning that patience and having it become part of your characters is tough. But then once you start practicing it, you can definitely see the results of it. You know, patience with people. Yeah. Patience with life. Patience with a pandemic. we all probably need a little bit of patience right now. Yeah. And then probably focus. I kind of have a mind that doesn't turn off. Learning focus, and, you know, you learn that through different means, meditation, and listening to others, tracking your results, you know, things like that. Yeah, it sounds like it's two things that you mentioned in your introduction, being both a Christian and being a Taoist. Like, it sounds like there's some notion of spirituality and like how you find the patience and the focus that you just talked about. Those must be other ways by which you access those qualities. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's like it's a forever lesson. It's a forever struggle. It's a forever, you know, journey. And, you know, we all have our differences, and, you know, learning what your weaknesses are and your strengths are, you know, it can help you along your path. And patience and focus really helps me in, like, organization. I'm not an organized person by nature, but I am one in life because I've learned the tools. Yeah. And it helps me achieve results. So now it's funny because I think a lot of the ways people view me is like, it's not part of my nature. Like I'm extremely shy, but I don't know that I would have guessed that from talking to you, but nobody. And so maybe I'm not shy anymore, right? But I'll tell you, inside it's still there. But I've learned the tools, and I've learned how to navigate around it. Like, I'm not an organized person. Now I'm more organized than most people. Sure. Because I've practiced it. Yeah. But, like, isn't that true for a lot of things? I mean, we spend time practicing and we get better.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't get better at everything, right?
No.
Like I'm never going to be in the NBA, that's for sure.
So, Nicolai, where can people find out more about you? Are you online? Do you have something coming up that people should be watching for?
LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'm on Instagram, but very little nowadays. My websites, I have Mustard Seed Hospitality, which is my consulting company.
Okay.
I have Ferdinand's Paella, which is my paella company. But yeah, people can get a hold of me through LinkedIn.
Cool.
I love chatting with people. I love the social aspect of all that stuff. And I love, like, if anybody has a problem, they can email me. I love helping people with problems.
Oh, that'd be great. I wonder if in the show notes, and it doesn't have to be, your proprietary paella recipe, but I wonder if you have a favorite paella recipe you could share with folks who might be interested in making this at home.
I have ratios.
Okay.
Because the best way to cook paella is sobre la marcha, which means like you kind of figure it out as you go.
Okay.
So you get like kind of a base of this is what it takes to make good paella, but then the ingredients are found at the farmer's market. The ingredients are found at the fish market when you're standing there.
Okay.
And paella is one of those things, like, if you're going to cook it once, like, don't. Like, if you're going to cook it 20 times, then yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
But there's a big learning curve. Like, it's constant. I mean, I've been cooking paella for 15, 16 years, and I'm now becoming happy with my paellas. Like,
so it's taken you 15 years to become satisfied with your paella.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't sell paella for 12 years.
Right.
I just started selling it
3 or
4 years ago. Yeah, I'd only do them for family, friends, and staff.
Okay.
But finally, I was like, okay, I'm finally happy with them. And it's funny because the guy that taught me, it's like, I call it, like, when I was in Spain, my roommate, he's from Valencia.
Okay.
That's where I learned to make paellas from him. He would make it, and I'd just be like, you're a god of rice. Like, how do you do this? And every time he'd be like, you should try my dad's. This is nothing.
Oh, wow.
It's funny because it's like, I hear that same thing happen to me. Like, this is nothing. You should try Reuben's. Like,
sure.
Jeez.
Right. That's one thing we didn't, and I can't believe we didn't land on it. And I'm thinking about it now as you're talking about this. Like, your recipe is not about solid ingredients, like 2 cups of this and, a pound of this or whatever it is. Really, there's a lot of cooking that is improvisational. You have to, because like it's dependent on what you find at the farmer's market. Like if you're cooking in a restaurant, like what are the things that you're finding out in the open? Like if it's not strawberry season, you're not going to put strawberries on the menu, but you might need to have something sweet. You might need to have some sort of berry or fruit or something else. Nothing else works like in the same way that a strawberry does. Like a blueberry doesn't work the same way. It's not just like adding the same amount. You have to understand each one of your ingredients.
Yeah, it's funny because like coaching cooks, it's like they, a lot of people that work for me, they're like, they'll get to a point where they started asking me questions. They've been asking me questions for months, and then eventually they'll come up to me, they'll ask me a question, and they'll stop, and they'll answer it because they look at my face and they can see the answer, and they're like, he says the same thing every time, right. And it's, well, what do you think? And then they answer me, and I go, that sounds like a good idea. And then they're looking at me like, because most chefs will be like, it's like this, and like this, right. And then I'll talk them through it. Yeah, that sounds good. Why don't you try that? And then it's you start empowering people to use what's just naturally inside of them.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, my wife, anybody that calls me, and be like, okay, well, this is how I do it. This is the ratio you need, because there is some information you need to give people.
Sure.
Like, paella, it's either 3 to 1, 2 to 1. It takes 20 minutes to cook.
Right.
There's things that don't change that are more like the science of cooking, right? But,
sure.
It's like most things, you need a structure, and then they're organic, right? And the structure is kind of the science of food.
Yeah.
And so once the more you understand the science of food, and you understand how your palate works, you understand the flavors in your mouth, you understand the flavors in your olfactory.
Yeah. You
can start really messing with palates and really getting to know food. And then your palate grows. I mean, food is it's better with wisdom.
Yeah.
And so you need that structure, and then you need that organic. and that organic is in people. They just don't know it. It's like, well, taste it. Is it salty? Does it need more salt? It's like, well, what do you think? And they taste it and they're like, it needs more salt. And you go, yeah, it needs more salt.
That's awesome. Well, Nicolai, thanks for making time today, holding this space and time with me. Really enjoyed our conversation.
Absolutely. I had a blast talking. It's fun. Next time, hopefully it'll be over a paella and some wine.
Yeah, totally. I'd love to take you up on that.
As soon as COVID's done, I'll be holding more events. But until then, the backyard is where I do it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure the backyard is a happening place to be right now. Your backyard, anyway.
Oh, it is. I got a pit back there. I do it over wood when I do it at home.
Nice. Thank you for making the time to listen today. I hope you learned something from my conversation with Nicolai. I know I did. And we'll talk again soon.
I cooked on the line first time in 6 years last night.
Oh, really?
The place I'm consulting, yeah. I'm consulting right down the road.
Okay.
So it was funny. Yeah.
Nice. Well, we can definitely talk about we can talk about that.
Okay.
Because I think well, let's get into the nuts and bolts of the episode.